Amazing. So I'm going to start, and then if more people join, brilliant. If not, that's fine too. So hello everybody, and welcome to our Future of Slow Fashion discussion. My name is Sorscha Rigney, and for those who don't know me, I graduated from a BA in fashion design in 2017. Went on to work in the industry in London in luxury women's wear for 2 years. Became really disappointed and underwhelmed by the social and environmental metrics of the fashion industry, I guess. So then went to work for a social enterprise, still based in textiles, but their mission was to empower and employ women in India to upskill on their garment making skills. And I just wanted to learn more about ethical and sustainable business. And now I am studying for my master's in sustainability and management at the University of Bath, with a particular interest in social risk in supply chain. Thank you for joining. I have to say, I have to thank my good friend Laoise Carey for organising this today. This event is a celebration of Fashion Revolution Week 2022. So I thought I would get started with what Fashion Revolution Week is. So driven by the incredible social enterprise Fashion Revolution, which I'm sure you all know, and if not, please do give them a Google. They do really amazing work. Fashion Revolution Week happens around the 24th of April every year. This is the anniversary of the Rana Plaza disaster. And the collapse of the Rana Plaza building was in 2013 and killed 1,100 people, most of whom were female garment workers. So this makes the Rana Plaza disaster the fourth largest industrial disaster in history. And thus the aim of Fashion Revolution Week is to educate each other on the true cost and value of our clothes. This is because no one should die for fashion. And the theme of this year's Fashion Revolution Week is money, fashion, and power. So the mainstream fashion industry is built upon the exploitation of labour and natural resources. Wealth and power are concentrated in the hands of a few, and growth and profit are rewarded above all else. Big brands and retailers produce too much, too fast, and manipulate us into a toxic cycle of overconsumption. Meanwhile, the majority of people that make our clothes are still not paid enough to meet their basic needs. So some of the aims of Fashion Revolution Week include encouraging brands to shift their focus away from endless growth, inspiring consumers to scrutinize the real value of what they buy, and showcase inspiring new designers and thinkers all over the world, challenging the system with solutions and alternative models. So now is the time to rise up together for a regenerative, restorative, and revolutionary new fashion system. And now is the time for a fashion revolution. And also, I forgot to mention, for those of you who don't know, I started a podcast in 2020 over lockdown, where I interviewed some Irish designers on their design practice in Ireland. So definitely check that out. It's called the Local Honey Project, and I guess that's how I ended up here today and how Laoise ended up asking me to host this. And now I am going to introduce the wonderful three designers that we are joined with today. I'll let them introduce themselves. So first of all, if we go to Laoise Carey from Laoise Carey Studio.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for all joining this evening. It's so nice to know that we hopefully have something interesting to say to everyone. I my brand is called Laoise Carey Studio. My pieces are all made from vintage and recycled textiles. So everything that I use is upcycled or repurposed, from old curtains to antique lace and vintage buttons and ribbons. And I started my business during lockdown after being in London for 2 years working in the fashion industry, doing fashion week shows. And when lockdown came, I found myself back in Ireland and decided I better start selling something and start making my own products. So yeah, so I'm just, at the moment, everything is available on my website, and I'm sure some of you probably already follow me on Instagram, and I have new pieces in Diva in Dublin at the moment. So that's a little bit about me and my business. And will I hand it over to Amy next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Amy. I am the founder of Imara Earth, that's currently based here in Galway. Our pieces are made from sustainable materials. We started out with Irish linen, but now use some organic cottons as well. And we have some multifunctional pieces as well as some unisex pieces. Everything is made in Ireland by myself and 2 other seamstresses. And for every piece we sell, we plant a tree on my family farm in Donegal. My background, as well, I studied in Ulster University, and since then I worked in New York and in Kenya, where I grew up, and then I went on to do my own thing. I'll pass it on to Colin.
Hi everyone, my name is Colin. I set up my business in 2019, and I create handmade garments that are either hand crocheted or are in knitwear, and I suppose I'm trying to reinvent and put my own take on an traditional Aran sweater. All of the materials I use are based from companies in Ireland, so Donegal Yarns or Kerry Woolen Mills, and all of the pieces are handmade then in Ireland also. So I keep everything in Ireland with the labels, everything I do as much as I can. And then I have a couple of hand knitters, a couple in Donegal, a couple in Galway, and then a few in the Aran Islands. And then I have hand crocheters as well recently in the last year, just as, you know, the business has kind of gone in another way with crochet and looking at combining both elements. So yeah, I studied an NCAG with Leisha and Sorscha, and yeah, I had a great time there with them, and I didn't ever predict that I'd end up doing this, but yeah, no, it's been a really good learning experience. I'm happy to help anyone in any way. Thanks so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session today. So if you've got any questions for any of us, we are happy to help. But for now, we are going to move on into the discussion, which is inspired by this year's Fashion Revolution theme. Yeah, so our first question, I might go to Leisha for this one, is how do you think small independent designers play a role in shifting the power away from large companies?
So for me, I think that small and independent businesses play a huge role, even though sometimes we do feel like we're, you know, so small that we couldn't have that much of an impact. So I think that the most important role that small businesses play is offering different options to customers. Because everybody talks about sustainability and ethical fashion and changing the system, but we have to provide some kind of alternative for people if they are going to move away from fast fashion or really try to invest in high quality non kind of trend driven pieces, there has to be an alternative. And I think that's where small businesses can really step up and provide that alternative, and also provide a little bit of more education about the fashion industry, because a lot of small businesses are part of the slow fashion movement. So their work is considered and it's done slowly. The seasons are not as quick, and they're much more focused on sustainability and using eco-friendly fabrics and manufacturing processes. So the whole ethos of being a small business is helpful to educate customers and to provide different options for them if they are looking for Irish made or locally made products, and sold by small independent retailers.
Yes, totally. And I think also small designers kind of act as like this model, where, I mean, large companies, if they're paying attention at all, but also consumers can really learn a lot from your businesses, as you were saying, and learn the true cost of clothing. I know that, Laoise, you've put up before, you know, what exactly goes into producing one of your garments. And I think that that's so important, because we seem to have become so disconnected with what clothing actually costs, what it should cost, what work goes into clothing. Clothing is made by hands, after all. It's always so funny whenever you see somebody saying it was handmade. Of course it was. So yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. So that takes us on to our next question. So I might go to Amy for this one.
Yeah.
So what is the importance of supporting smaller independent designers like yourself, rather than a large corporation?
Yeah, I think that it's important to support small designers like us, because we're also creating a lot of jobs for local people. I remember whenever I graduated from college and I wanted to work for a sustainable and ethical brand, but there was little to few around at that time, which is something that's really important for other designers that are graduating and looking for jobs in that industry. As well, it's nice because small brands can offer like a bespoke element, and there's a lot of more care that goes into the pieces. And today in particular, you see a lot of large corporations stealing the designs of smaller brands, which is such a shame. So I think that small brands really do hold a lot of power and create something that's so important that, yeah, I think that it's really important that we have them today.
Yeah, definitely.
Agreed, and love that point on how you provide employment in the industry. I think particularly for, I guess, artisans and producers, especially in Ireland, the manufacturing sector has kind of almost disappeared. I mean, I've not worked in it and I've not tried to work in it, so you guys would know better than I have, but I can imagine that it's difficult to get, I mean, maybe Colin, you'd be able to give us some insight on this, but was it difficult to find knitters and artisans that could help you?
I feel like that was the hardest thing. Well, that it still is the hardest thing. Like, I'm always looking for one, and they're very hard to get. And then you might find one that, you know, mightn't be able to adapt to your design. They might be able to they could be, you know, a woman in her 70s that's always made the same sweater for the last 30 years, and she's not going to be willing to look at what I want to maybe create. And so you kind of have to adapt your design to theirs and work with them on that. But they're very hard to come by, and it's definitely a craft that's not as, you know, popular in like a production point of view as it was maybe even 30 years ago. But I'm lucky with the few I have, but yeah, it's always a worrying thing. How do I scale? And production for me is definitely the barrier for how I scale, if I want to continue to get them made in Ireland. Like, there's no problem flying abroad and, you know, connecting with hand knitters or a factory, but it just goes it's so far from what I feel the message is that I'm trying to show in my business. So yeah, no, it is very difficult to find hand knitters. Yeah, it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there that your knitter would be, for example, maybe 70 or 70 years old. So would that be a concern for you in a way as a business
Like
owner that
my
in
best
10 years time, you know?
And I've a really, really good knitter, and she's 82 now, and she's in Donegal.
She's still working.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's just, oh my God, like even apart from the work she's done for me, everything that I've learned from her, she's knitted since she was a child, and it was just always a generational, you know, thing in her family and in her household. And she taught me so many little tips to know about creating a sweater and what would be, you know, the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and pointing out mistakes. And when I was trialing out other knitters, I would have brought their garments to her to get her advice on, you know, that eye isn't really present as much in, like, I feel the younger generation coming up now, and with COVID, it definitely made people look to, oh, I could maybe try and crochet or knit at home, and so many people fell in love with it. And I just feel I hope that continues, because I have two knitters then in Galway who are in their 30s, and they're fantastic, they're brilliant, and they're eager to learn more. So yeah, it's so interesting, you know, connecting with all of these people and having a conversation. But yeah, the knitter in Donegal is brilliant, yeah, and she's 82 now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's trying to like rebuild the craft, the crafting community. And Leisha, I guess, I mean, I hope you don't mind me divulging this, but we were chatting before and you were saying that's probably one of your biggest barriers to scale as well, was finding people that can produce locally in Ireland at a small scale and kind of upon a bespoke level, as you do with your fabrics, because they're all vintage pieces. So I was wondering if you could kind of maybe tell us about that struggle.
Yeah, I think for me, I know that Amy has some manufacturers as well, some people sewing with her, but for my main struggle is that just because my fabrics don't come on a roll, I would literally be handing them like a bag of scraps and, you know, asking them to sew something from it. So I think my process is a lot more like cut one piece, put it on the mannequin, see how it looks with all the different fabrics together, and then cut the rest, sew part of it, check it again. Yeah, the way that I work with the vintage fabrics, there's, you know, sometimes there's holes, sometimes there's stains that you can't get rid of. You have to cut around sections, you have to amend the pattern to try and fit some pieces in. So yeah, that's for me at the moment. I'm just like, it's easier if I just do it all myself, rather than trying to teach somebody how to work, but how to work the way that I do. But yeah, I think for me, I probably wouldn't be able to scale in terms of like going to a manufacturer and giving them all of my little vintage pieces. But if somebody was to work with me in my studio and we're there together sewing and cutting together, I think that's how I would probably scale. So it would be a much slower process, and it will still be like it's really handmade and handcrafted, which is what I want to kind of portray in my brand as well. So yeah, I haven't figured it out yet, but
yeah, it's difficult, definitely, but I guess I mean, it's kind of how it should be, I guess. The fact that we don't have access to these huge manufacturing facilities is kind of bittersweet, really, because on the other hand, there are lots of people being exploited, and yeah, I guess we don't really want to engage in that either. So it's a bit of a win-lose situation, I guess. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to move on to the next question. So how important are locally sourced materials in your practice? I'll go to Amy for this one. So maybe you could tell us a bit about how you source your fabrics and trims, and what, tell us a bit about how you do that and what's important for you.
Yeah, so when I started out, I was using Irish linen from 2 different suppliers in Ireland. But it is very difficult to get absolutely everything here in Ireland. So I guess it was more important to me to get things that were sustainable and eco-friendly if I couldn't necessarily get it locally. So I do get like a lot of buttons and trims and stuff from abroad. And now I'm making things like my fleece that I'm currently wearing. And it's made with organic cotton. So you can't get things like that, unfortunately, here in Ireland. But there are a lot of suppliers in Europe now as well. Actually, because of Brexit, I've had some trouble with some of the things that I used to buy from them, just all the extra charges. So that's been tricky too. But yeah, there's a lot compared to when I was in university. I was really interested in sustainability there, and I found it very tricky to get fabric that was eco-friendly and made in a sustainable way and ethically. But now there's a lot of options. There's a lot of like end of roll materials that you can use as well, but also like organic cottons and materials made from recycled products. So there's definitely a lot more out there, but it's tough to get stuff all in Ireland.
Definitely. And I guess just to throw in like a red herring, it's also difficult, I think, to ascertain how ethical and sustainable a fabric is, because the value chain in, say, a roll of cotton is so long. There are so many people involved. It's hard to account for all of these people. Have they all been paid? Is the fabric actually organic? Like I know H&M, if you look on their website, they say, you know, by such and such a year, we will use organic fabric. But if you look into it a bit further, they're actually using organic fabric in transition. So it's not 100% cotton organic, or organic cotton rather. It takes 3 years from converting from conventional farming, cotton farming, to organic cotton farming for the toxins to be totally removed from the soil and to actually have your fabric certified as organic. And the best certification to look out for that is called GOTS certified. And yeah, that's kind of where I guess competency, greenwashing comes into play, which is either intentional or unintentional misrepresentation of your ethical and social credentials. So it's really difficult. There's not much regulation around, I guess, the fashion industry in general. We've seen the Boohoo scandal in 2020. And yeah, I'll not go too much into it because it gets, I think, pretty heavy, but I totally agree. It's difficult to source everything in Ireland, especially organic cotton. Cotton that you make fabric from, I don't think grows in Ireland. You have to get it from India and everywhere. So it's a struggle, definitely, as a designer that wants to implement sustainable fabrics upon every single little aspect.
Yeah.
So amazing. So we'll move on. Maybe Colin could answer this one. So how can a brand move away from the focus of endless growth and adopt slow fashion values?
I feel it would be in how they produce the garments and how they would, like, for me, I would invest a lot of time in the make and the manufacturing. Like a jumper could take a couple of days to make, and well, I tend not to look at trends, and I wouldn't really focus on any fast fashion brands, and I try not to look too much at what others might create in case, you know, I'm trying to think what else I could say. I don't know. I feel
it's tricky because a business can't really function without a profit, can it? So
like I'd love to stay all day sitting down designing and really think everything through, but at the end of the day you have to make the sales in order for me to continue doing this. And like what Amy was saying, when I first started making the sweaters, they were all in wool, and I sourced the wool from Donegal Yarns, and I sourced it from Kerry Woolen Mills and kept that in Ireland. And then that was okay for maybe the first 9 months. And then when maybe a customer wanted to come back and try to buy a second item, like what could I offer them as, you know, a second item other than the same sweater in a different color? And, you know, maybe she or they wanted like not to have wool again, maybe they wanted to have cotton. And when I realized that, and I suppose I stock in Havana Boutique in Dublin, and with the help of the ladies there, like they encouraged me to maybe go down the route of working with cotton. And then I had to, like what you were saying there, I had to source the cotton from an Italian company, and it was to offer an alternative. But I just made sure that I brought all the cotton into Ireland, sent the cotton to all the knitters in Ireland and myself, and together we made the wool jumpers in cotton. So maybe what you're saying is keep your practice here in Ireland as much as possible. I know you can't do it all in Ireland, but that keeps you true to, well, what you, I suppose, start out to do. Is that it?
Yeah, no, definitely. But I guess it makes it really tricky for you guys though, whenever you're competing against all of these other brands that are now, you know, becoming eco-conscious and are a fraction of the price. And the fashion industry, I guess, is a hugely competitive market in that sense, that if there are huge corporations that can afford to exploit these people way down the value chain, and we don't have any visibility on that. Whereas you guys are actually doing good stuff, employing lots of amazing people, and also just have incredible values and a great mission behind your brand. But again, whenever somebody sees, you know, the same, maybe a similar jumper for, you know, half the price or whatever, that makes it difficult for you.
Oh, it does, yeah, because you can go on H&M, you can go on Cost, you can go on, you know, any of these brands, and oh, Jesus, you see sweaters and you go, oh my gosh, you know, they're €59.
Yeah.
You know, there's loads of
you almost drop off your seat.
like the wool would be more than that for the mines. So it's kind of like, how do you and then you pay the knitter, and then you pay your VAT, then you pay everything, you know, like what Leisha did, and feature all of the costings to get it to the sales. You know, you have to retail at the price you retail at, and it's very hard to compete with, you know, these big multinational companies that can.
It's hard as well. Sorry if I might.
Yeah. No, not at all.
It's hard as well, I guess, when you're a small business, because you're not buying in like huge quantities at once. So then the price is always a little bit higher. And as well, I think that for small businesses like us, a lot of people have like a moral compass built in them to want to make things sustainably and ethically from the get-go, but the high street fashion stores, they're like on a completely different path, and people are so used to spending like less money for what they want. So we have less of a market interested, or that have the funds to afford what we want to do. And then also for them, it's going to be hard for them to change because their prices are going to have to increase if they are going to make things sustainable and ethical. So hopefully one day it will all even out. But yeah, I think that it's difficult. It's very competitive.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then, so Amy, what does the term slow fashion mean to you? And do you think that that can ever be replicated by a corporation, like a huge corporation like
I'd like
H&M?
to see that it can be. I think slow fashion for me is like ethical fashion as well as sustainable fashion, and sustainable fashion has been like thrown around a lot, that people think that now, like H&M and other high street brands, when they say that their materials are sustainable, people, I guess, are a little uneducated, that they don't understand that they still have very bad working conditions and they aren't paying their employers correctly, and have like bad ethics within their companies. So I think that it is just mainly more a lack of education for the consumers. But I think that people are more aware now, and particularly during the lockdown, I found that there was a lot more people that wanted to support small businesses, local businesses, and grew their knowledge and want for sustainable products as well, which is such a huge and important shift. So I would like to believe that it could be possible, but their prices are going to have to go up. But that means that it will also be more of a level playing field for all of us.
Yeah, the dream. I actually read that the CEO of Zalando said that in 10 years' time, the fast fashion model is going to become extinct, apparently. I don't know if that'll ever happen. But yeah, as you were saying, if they are ever to become sustainable and ethical and pay fairly down the value chain, then they are going to have to increase prices. They can't maintain what they're currently selling at. So it's going to be really interesting for companies like Shein, who just got valued at something like $10 billion, to adopt a more ethical and sustainable approach. And I'm curious to know then, as a designer, Leisha, how, like whenever you're observing other brands and be it maybe a big corporation or a small corporation, how do you gauge how sustainable or ethical they are? What kind of things do you look for?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I love telling people this. The first thing I always say to do is go onto a brand's website and look at the About Us section on their website, because it's so telling of what the brand stands for and what kind of sustainability efforts they're making. A lot of brands nowadays have a separate About Us section and the sustainability section, and they will talk about their founding story and their founders and why they started the brand. And then they'll also have a separate section talking about what they're doing to try and make their pieces more sustainable, more environmentally friendly. But it's always a massive red flag if a brand doesn't mention anything about that, or they, if it's like an influencer founded brand and all they're talking about is themselves and they don't ever mention anything about being eco-friendly, it's definitely a bit of a red flag. And then I would say one of the really interesting things is that the way that a lot of the high street brands are owned by the same kind of parent companies. So it's really interesting to look those up. Like basically look up who owns Zara and who owns H&M, and it will come up on Google a massive list. It could be like 10 to 20 other brands that are all owned by the same corporation. So that means if there's one brand that you know for sure is fast fashion, the rest of them are probably fairly similar because they're all owned by the same parent company. So that's something really worth looking into as well. And then apart from that, I think like just looking up where the founders are from is like a really something that I've become really into, like Irish fashion lately, and I love to know like where they're based. Are they based in Ireland? So if I'm buying a product where the founder is based in Ireland, I know that the carbon footprint is going to be a bit smaller than if I'm buying products, even if it's made by you know, a handmade sustainable company, if it's in like South America or India, it's going to be a long trek to get to Ireland, and probably going to incur a lot of fees on the way, customs charges and stuff. So yeah, I think like trying to make the decisions by shopping locally, and looking to Ireland, the UK, and Europe before kind of going further afield is another really good way to just kind of keep your carbon footprint low, and try and buy from small independent brands as much as possible.
Brilliant, yeah. And I think my master's has made me so critical of any kind of company trying to claim that they're sustainable. But if you are interested in kind of learning more about maybe H&M sustainability or Pennies or any of those guys, I would urge you to take a look at their annual report from the previous year and scroll down to their ESG section, environmental social governance, and that's where they now are almost legally obliged to disclose their carbon footprint, like the suppliers they work with, are they paying people fair wages, and if they haven't included metrics in that or numbers, then ask yourself why. Where is the evidence? If they make a claim, are they backing it up with solid concrete evidence? Recently, we looked just through as like a uni exercise, we looked through Primark UK's annual report from last year, and it was incredible how confusing they made it. But I'm sure that was intentional. By the end, a group of sustainability students actually couldn't ascertain what in fact they had implemented or what they were saying was true, because none of it was backed up with evidence. So although, you know, I mean, M&S, believe it or not, is meant to be quite a good one, but say, for example, H&M, who we seem to be picking on today, or Zara, if they have these incredible sustainability portals on their websites, look for the numbers, look for the targets. Have they met those targets? Also bear in mind that companies usually set targets that they know that they're going to meet. So yeah, it's really difficult, but again, that's, I guess, where government legislation and policy will come in useful, hopefully in the future. And I think, unfortunately, scandals like the Boohoo scandal in 2020, which shouldn't have happened, but hopefully should maybe expedite some of that to come through soon. Amazing. So maybe we'll move on to the next question. I'm also really cautious of time. We wanted to try and keep the discussion to like 45 minutes. So I guess, yes. So Colin, as a brand, how do you go about educating consumers on the downfalls of the fashion industry, and encouraging to make the switch away from fast fashion? Or do you ever have that kind of conversation with somebody about why maybe there is more value in what you have to offer than, say, cost?
Yeah, well, I feel I was lucky in the beginning when I was in Creation Brown Thomas, and that particular year it was the big push on sustainability, and I featured in a couple of Irish newspaper articles and magazines, and you know, the consumer that may have followed my work read what I had to say about it. And then I, you know, when a customer reaches out on an email and we start a conversation, and I would normally do a phone call or a Zoom, and we just get chatting about everything you see is made to order, other than where I'm stocked in Dublin at the moment. So, you know, the customer goes on a wait list, you know, she understands that, you know, I mightn't get to her for 6-8 months, and you know, she just listens to the whole story about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And I think when they reach out and they are willing to make that purchase, I feel I meet a lot of women who are already in tune with it, and I don't feel I've had to really show a customer yet the difference in what I'm doing to what Cost is doing. You know, I think,
Right.
or any, let's say Zara, like, I think they know that, like, the story I have shared about the work and how they're made entices them into, you know, they like, obviously like the design, but they love the story that is attached to the inspiration that first created these pieces with my grandmother, and then how, you know, how long it takes to make one, the fact that they're hand knitted. I think they, and like the way that they can pick the color with me, they can pick the measurements with me, we can make changes if they decide that they like a cuff on one and they like the neck on another. I can combine all of that for them. That's how the nature of my business works. So they know, they put in their order, that, you know, they mightn't see the sweater, any piece, coat, whatever it is, they mightn't see it for 6 months. And they know that's because as I go on that journey of creating the piece, I'm sending them progress images, I'm sending them, you know, double checking questions on lengths and widths and how puffy they might want a sleeve or how the neckline should be shaped. So they're part of the whole journey with me. So I think from the outset, they just really know what they're buying into when they're, and then they share this whole story with their friends, which is great. And I've had friends come, you know, of a customer purchase, and then I'm able to share this story with Havana Boutique a lot more than I was able to share with Brown Thomas, because I suppose I worked in Brown Thomas, but it's a large store, it's a department store, you know, they haven't got, you know, they would love to listen to everyone's story, but, you know, you can only give them a snippet in an interview. When I work way closely with the boutique in Dublin, as it's a smaller boutique and the owner is present in the business, and I feel obviously that's not really possible in a department store, but when the owner is present and a customer walks into that small space and they trust that owner who's had the shop 27 years this year, and I've shared my story with her and she's sharing it with the customer, it's just, that's what it's really all about. It's word of mouth. It's, you know, the few articles in the beginning 2 or 3 years ago are great, but it's the word of mouth from the customer to the next customer. That's what I feel I'm doing every week now in this.
Oh my God, I feel like that gave me chills. That should be
well,
what fashion is about.
That's just the way the week goes. That's just the way Monday to Friday goes.
I love it. Oh, that's so nice though, that every piece kind of has its own story right from the beginning. And
I know, but then you get into, I'm at a time where nice that you can get, you know, customers that might want to, you know, jump in and almost design it with you, and then
you need boundaries.
You're not able to do those things for them, and then, you know, on 1 or 2 occasions I've created pieces that wouldn't look at anything like what I would normally do, and I'm like, but look, that's just the way it goes. But you just have to be careful when you're doing that made to measure. Like, if there's anyone on watching this, when you do made to measure, I'm sure they've come across it as well, but you just have to be careful how much you bring in and how much they bring in, you know, just to keep it, because it can be difficult doing it, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that is really lovely though, that the consumer is kind of part of the story right from the beginning.
Oh yeah, I have to have them involved, because the price point isn't like, it's not a low price point there, and the customer knows that, and I want to deliver that service when they're paying, you know, as well as the amount of costs that are at my end, but I have to deliver that service. I have to
yeah,
you know, and I feel I'm doing right by that, because I'm sharing what, you know, happens every day in what I'm doing, you know. So
no, definitely. And I guess they appreciate that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So maybe then, Amy, we'll move on to you in the next question. Have you noticed, or are you seeing a change in opinions of consumers about buying Irish brands? Do you notice maybe more of a push toward shopping locally and investing in Irish made items? I'm actually really curious to know from maybe the three of you, like ever since COVID in particular, did you notice? I mean, I know that Leisha only set up her business in COVID, so maybe isn't applicable there, but have you noticed maybe more consumers, like a higher consumer demand for your products since then? Or yeah, are you noticing a change basically in consumer patterns?
Yeah, I definitely did, particularly during COVID. I guess as well, something that I feel really contributed towards it was people were sitting at home and not spending their money. So a lot of people had a lot of money that they just wanted to get rid of. So it was quite a busy period for me. And definitely then once like all of the lockdowns were over, it was like July, August of last summer, my sales just started to fall and I was like, oh my gosh, but it was because everyone was going to weddings, going on holidays and back to their normal life. But still, like, continuing on from there, I have still had a lot of sales, more than what I would have had previously to COVID. I think people definitely are more aware of Irish brands and wanting to support local. There was so much talk about supporting local during COVID. And yeah, I think that people have kind of opened their eyes a little bit more, and there's also a lot more available, I guess, now. As I was saying, whenever I graduated, there wasn't quite as many fashion brands that are sustainable in Ireland, so there's a lot more around too. And as well, last Christmas I did the Ballymaloo Christmas craft fair, and when people saw my stuff, they were like, oh my gosh, and you make these in Ireland? How have I never seen this? So like, people are really into it. It's just about getting your name out there, which I think is something that I really struggle with, because being a small brand and running everything by yourself, you solely rely on yourself to draw traffic to your site, because I only sell from my site at the minute. So it's tough to get your name out there, and you always have to be working on ads and reaching out to press and editors, and people are really keen to get your name out there too, especially Irish editors. They really want to promote Irish brands. So yeah, like, it's always a work in progress, but I think that people are keen to support Irish, definitely more so now than before.
Brilliant. And then how would you describe the like small business community in Ireland? Would you say it's quite a supportive community, or like, do you get in touch and chat and like collaborate, or what's the kind of vibe?
Yeah, yes, I think Ireland has like a lovely community. I feel it's more the markets and in-person events that you go to that you really get to know people and get to chat to people. But in my experience, people have been extremely helpful and friendly and really want to help you and show you the way. As well, the local enterprise office, and there's other kind of things set up like that to help small businesses. They're all extremely helpful, which is something that I really wish that I had gotten to know more towards the beginning, because whenever I've had like a million questions and always been like, gosh, I don't know how to do that, I don't know how to do that. And then once I got through to someone on the local enterprise office, he was like, call this person and call this person, and people are just so willing to help you. So I think definitely people are very helpful and very open, and I really appreciate that. It's lovely.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's great. Good to have whenever you're starting out, I guess.
Yeah.
And kind of on that note then, Leisha, what advice do you have for young designers who are starting off in their career?
So I would say the first thing that kind of comes to mind is to, when you graduate, to be really open about where your career is going to take you, because sometimes people think they're just going to set up their own business and they're going to be in like Paris Fashion Week and everything is going to go amazingly well and they're going to live the fancy fashion lifestyle. And it's just so it's like it's such a dream that people in college think is it could be easily attained, but it's really not. So like my main advice definitely is to be open about where you're going to go with your career, because there's so many different aspects of the fashion industry, and a lot of designers that I know are not necessarily fashion designers anymore, or they've more called themselves creators now, even though they studied fashion design in the past. So definitely for anybody who's graduating, I would say like take every job opportunity you can, because there's so many jobs in the fashion industry, like pattern cutting, sewing, manufacturing and production. Then there's like fashion photography, magazines, journalism, PR, styling, influencing, you know, and there's just so many different aspects, and there's retail and things like that. So you really could end up in any part of the fashion industry, and it's only through work experience that you can kind of figure out what suits you best. And you know, sometimes I remember when I was living in London, there was a lot of kind of, I won't say horror stories, but like there's a lot of stories about designers who won massive awards at age, you know, 21 or 22, with their graduate collections or their master's collections. And then as soon as their kind of funding money ran out and their mentorship ended, they were just kind of lost, and they had to kind of let go of the business and kind of change career paths because they just couldn't survive on their own. They didn't have the work experience behind them, or the kind of knowledge that comes with age and experience and all that. So yeah, I think work experience is the key. Work in different areas, talk to as many people as you can, meet as many people as you can, and like just try and find your niche in the industry, and also continue being creative once you're finished college. Because I remember I did a second kind of mini collection while I was working in London. I did it in the evenings, and then I got one of my friends to organize a photo shoot for me. So she styled it, and she got her friend who's a photographer to take some pictures, and it was literally in my house in London that I was renting. And we took pictures in my bedroom, in the kitchen, in the garden, and one of our interns at my job modeled for me. So like creative little projects like that are just, they're amazing for your portfolio, and they're amazing to kind of keep your creativity going while you're kind of, maybe you're working for someone else, just trying to get the experience in, but you want to do something for yourself as well. So yeah, that's what I would say to graduates.
Yeah, amazing advice. And I love the bit about, you know, like no career is linear ever. So just go in, give it a go. And if you don't love it, if you hate it, in fact, and you want to leave and try something different, that's totally fine. I found personally there was like this kind of stigma, which I probably reinforced in myself as well, that whenever I worked in design and then after 2 years decided to leave design, I kind of felt like, oh God, but this is all I've worked towards, like why now am I leaving? And it was like this huge decision, and I felt almost ashamed to leave in a way, even though I really wasn't happy working in fashion. But yeah, I mean, there is no one fits all model for any career, and that is also reflected in the fashion industry, which is a tough industry. You know, they all warn us about it, and it's not until you get out there and start working in it that you realize that actually it's not that easy, it's not that glamorous. But I think just have faith in yourself that you are doing what's right for you and heading in whatever direction that you're meant to be going in. It's a journey, not a destination. Then Colin, what would you say that you have learned about the fashion industry that you wish that you'd known when you first graduated from your undergraduate?
Maybe that there's very, like, if you wanted to work for somebody to get the experience in Ireland, I don't know, is that really possible? I think you'd have to move, like what Laoise did, like you'd have to kind of go after graduating to London or America, but probably London or Paris. And you know, I didn't know when I went into NCAG, my plan was to do paint. I always wanted to look at that. And then when I went into fashion, I just didn't really know, like what you're saying, I thought I was going to walk out and have this big brand and everything was going to be brilliant, but it's not like that at all. It's so tough. It's a very hard industry to do well in, and you might like think you're doing well, and you know, it's, for me anyway, with developing my own business, I think what I would have loved if there was in college was maybe 1 day a week of learning the ins and outs of running a business and VAT and tax and how to do a business plan and all of these things, costings, what do you charge, what do you pay, how much do you sell your garment for. A lot of that we didn't really, I suppose maybe we just didn't have, well, we knew we didn't have the time in NCAG to look into all of that. But I wish coming out of college, I knew the ins and outs of every day running a business. But in the Irish fashion industry, maybe I would have liked if I had collaborated more while I was in college to see who would I work with in terms of suppliers, or I'm trying to think. I didn't go and do an internship in London or anything like that after college, so I kind of missed out all of that experience of how would you like I didn't really know. I suppose I didn't know what I was getting myself in for when I made the first few jumpers. And I think I quickly learned that if you want to run a business like a brand in Ireland, you have to be connected to your local enterprise office. You have to be connected to Design and Crafts Council. There's a lot of boxes that you have to tick in order to get, with the way our government is, to get to the next bit of like funding for a website, funding for equipment, mentorship, like all of these things that you would need. Well, not that everyone would need them, but I feel they really benefited me. So yeah, I think that would be it for me. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. I think, yeah, no, that's, I mean, we didn't really learn anything but design. So I don't have my own business, but I can't imagine trying to negotiate tax and business plans and all of that while producing a collection or managing the production of a collection and finding suppliers.
Yeah.
It's it sounds like an impossible task.
It's not. No, it's fine. I'm not going to say it's fine. No, it is fine. But,
it's a challenge.
There's just a lot of work in it.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever realized how much you'd love to sit all day and design and sketch all these lovely garments, but that's just not the reality of it.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I agree.
I would definitely tell people to work with their local enterprise office, and work with Design and Crafts Council. And Design and Crafts Council do have really good mentors, and there is really good journalists and magazine editors out there and stylists. Like the industry in Ireland, they're so supportive and they really want to showcase Irish design. So reach out to them, because they really do want to, and that benefits you. That's that value of being in a magazine or being in a newspaper, getting an interview. That's really valuable to you. It really is.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. Thank you, Colin. I think on that note, maybe we'll move on to questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put up your hand, put your video on, put a message into the chat box, which I see that we've got. Just do the Zoom question thing. So we've got a question from Aidan, which is for Colin. So Aidan has her own hand knitting business, and she would like to know what's your favorite wool to work with. She's working with alpaca wool for the first time and she likes it.
Oh, I've actually never worked with alpaca wool, but I would love to. It's meant to be really, really nice quality. For me, I love working with merino wool, but then I wanted to tick certain boxes with my work. So I wanted, if I just felt myself personally, if I was putting 50 hours or 30 hours into a garment, that if I was making it in Ireland, I wanted the wool to be from Ireland as well. So straight away that limited me in my choice of wool to either Donegal Yarns in Kilcar, who produced for Spring Wools, Studio Donegal. So they would produce for a lot of, brands in Dublin like that, make wool, but the wool is coming from the same factory. It's all coming from Donegal. Or else there's Kerry Woolen Mills, and Kerry Woolen Mills for me definitely have a better colour palette to choose from, but I just tend to prefer the quality of the Donegal yarns. But I have to go with either or depending on what the client is looking for in the colour. But I would mostly use Donegal yarns, for my garments.
Brilliant, thank you, Colin. I hope that answers your question, Aidan. So if anybody else has any questions, please do let us know. Feel free to unmute or use the chat box. Yes, Evelyn.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, what is your question?
Hi. So I'm a student, I'm in final year in LSAD, and I'm interested in design and buying and sustainable. I want my career to be as sustainable as possible. So I don't know where to start. Like, do I go down a buying route and try that, or do I go down a design route and try that? Like, so I don't know if anyone has any advice on where to start.
Sorry.
I would say try both.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I remember myself working in fashion for a year as an intern on minimum wage in London. And it was a big struggle, and I was really reconsidering everything that I was doing with my life, and looking at more office-based jobs still within fashion, which maybe had a higher entry level of income and salary. And I think fashion buying was definitely one of those. Like, I'm not saying that you're going to be a millionaire. It's definitely going to be like London living wage probably, or like a graduate entry level salary. But it is slightly different to get into buying from design. Like, say, if I had wanted to go into buying from working in design for a year, I would have kind of had to have started again. So maybe like ask, I'm not sure, have you done any internships before? Maybe ask yourself, did you enjoy it? What do you want from your career? What is important to you in your personal life as well as your professional life? I think design can be quite intense. I don't know, I'm probably giving a really biased opinion. Maybe somebody else could offer some more insight.
Well, I would say that with buying, I suppose it's more like, in a way, it's something you kind of work your way up to. You have to go through the process of learning all about the industry, to work in the kind of lower ranking jobs, like as a retail assistant and all that kind of thing. It's not something that you can just go straight in as a buying assistant usually. So I would say to start off with design, and then maybe move, once you're in the industry and you're working in a business, you'll be able to see what everybody else is doing, and then for your next job you can be like, okay, I'm going to apply for that only. Because when I first started, I was in working in design. Well, my first job I worked in pattern cutting, so I was learning pattern cutting, and then my second job I went back into design and ended up after like 6 months back in the sample room doing factory specs and working with the pattern cutters and everything. And that's just like where it suited me best. And I wouldn't, wouldn't have ever thought that I just wanted to be a pattern cutter for the rest of my life until I started that job. And then I was like, I actually love pattern cutting, but I'm going to try design too. So yeah, I think like it would probably be a really good experience for you to try design and then kind of work your way towards different roles within a company that could end up in buying. Because just if you go straight into retail after college, that's great, but you might lose a few years of experience in the design industry, and you might never end up going back, because really the first few years after you graduate are kind of the most important, because they're when you're going to get paid the lowest, and by the time you're nearly 30 you're like, I don't want this low pay anymore.
I'm already nearly 30, unfortunately.
Sorry, I can't see. I graduated when I was 22, so back it's like, oh, I don't mind, kind of giving up a lot to take lower paying jobs and get the work experience. But yeah, it's really like just about getting out there, getting into any company and seeing how they work there, and then you'll know for sure if you're enjoying it or not.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've worked both in like more creative parts of the industry and then like more of a computer-based part. And definitely whenever I was behind a computer, I really missed being creative. So I guess then I knew that that's definitely what I wanted to do. So I think if you could try both things, that would really help, because you'll know which one you're more drawn to.
Yeah, totally.
Thank
and just
you so much.
To reflect what Amy said there, I kind of did the opposite. So I went into like design and a creative role and realized that I didn't like it and have ended up going the other way. So definitely just like go with your gut, whatever you think you're going to enjoy. First of all, try it, and then if it doesn't work out, then you can move on and try something else. Yeah,
thank you so much.
Amazing.
Question there in the chat.
Yes, so Kira has asked how you find work-life balance running your own business. She would like to know if you've got any tips that have found time to still make their passion project remain fun and productive. So yeah, I'll leave that to you guys, because I definitely don't have my own business.
I think that's a very tricky one, actually. I know for me anyway, when I started out, I was working full-time as well. So every evening I was sewing and every weekend I was sewing. So I didn't have a good work-life balance. It was just a work balance, or not even balance at all. So I think initially it is a huge amount of work. And I find that once you start, then you kind of get addicted to it and you don't want to take a step back, because then you feel like you're falling back and everyone else around you is doing better than you and doing more than you. But it is very, very important to take a step back, because once you come back to it, you are more refreshed, you have more energy and more ideas, and it is important to take that time, even though it's difficult. But now that I work full-time on my business, then it's definitely easier to have more of a work-life balance, but it's a tricky one for sure.
Yeah, I would say that actually something I learned from Sorscha when we were in college was that you actually can't be creative to the best of your abilities if you're exhausted and you're overworked and you're not enjoying it anymore. So definitely like taking time out is so important. It's not so much probably a balance as like every now and again you're like, I'm just taking a week's holiday, or taking a long weekend or something like that, and then other times you're working through weekends get things done. So it's kind of like, depends on how busy you are, and yeah, sometimes it's hard to strike a good balance, but like there's a lot, I think, as well, that you kind of have to be willing to give up if you're starting your own business. And like for me, I ended up moving back in with my parents because I was like, I just couldn't imagine paying rent for a studio as well as a living situation and everything in Dublin or wherever, or London. So that type of thing definitely helps with your kind of work-life balance, but you have to really be willing to let some things go, or to kind of give up some aspects of your life that you wish you had. But yeah, it is possible to get a balance, but sometimes it does take a while until your business is up and running and you feel like a little bit more in control of everything.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laoise. What's your advice, Colin, on that?
Well, I feel I didn't have it anyway, any work-life balance, until I got the few knitters, because I was just constantly, I was working off a wait list, and I was constantly making, and you'd only be finished a jumper or a cardigan or whatever, and then you're just finished it and you just have it posted, and then you're just going to start the next one straight away. And I found that very tough. I did, like, especially in the beginning, because there was deadlines for stocking in a shop, or there was a showcase, or there was whatever, and you say, oh yeah, no problem, I can do 20, yeah, and you're just not able to, like. So then when I got the knitters, then I suppose it gave me a bit of a break, like, as in, I don't make as much as I would have in the beginning, but then to coincide with that, then you have a lot of organizing to do. You have to, like, link in with them not every day, but most days. You've loads more emails, messages, calls, like, so building up the few of them I have, like, the work shifted in a different direction. But I just feel like you have to not do it like 7 days a week. You have to take one day. You can't, and if you're tired, you're just not going to make what could be your best, or what you feel you're somewhat proud of. You're not going to do it if you're tired, and you're not going to, like, if there's a piece due for a customer in, like, tomorrow, let's say, I'm not going to spend all night working on it, because I will make a mistake, or I'm going back to now when I first started, like, I just wouldn't. You have to call it tonight, and you have to get up early the next morning, and if with a fresh head, like, you definitely make decisions a lot better. And you do have to take one day and just try and pick the same. I would advise people to try and pick the same day, and try and pick a day in the week that you just do your admin and all of your, maybe not, like, I don't know, I couldn't sit for at the beginning. I was sitting for 7 days making garments, and you quickly learn, like, it's not sustainable. You can't do that. It won't grow. And I don't know, I just feel it's easier said than done, obviously. Like, it is hard when you're under pressure, it's hard to just say, oh, I need to take a break, but you have to, you really do. Like,
yeah. No, I think that's, like, really valid advice, especially kind of whenever we're talking about sustainability and slow fashion, and that's kind of linked in with well-being as well. So definitely take care of yourself, and take time out, no matter how wrong it feels. But remember that you're a human too, and that you need to refill your cup to give your all to your practice.
Because at the beginning, you say, like, when I first started and people asked for things for showcases or customers, whatever, yeah, no problem. Like, you agree to everything, and you just, now if a customer orders, I might say it's the wait time might be a month longer, because you have to, because you're just going to get, you take on too much, and then you're not going to produce something right then,
Yeah, it's particularly hard, like Colin's saying, at the beginning when you're starting out, you do feel obliged to say yes to
Oh, you do,
everything,
yeah,
and
definitely.
you
Yeah.
just get so
I
inundated.
know, and then you're like, what the hell? Like, I'm never gonna get,
You never
I'm not gonna
stop,
get any of it
day
done.
and night, 7 days a week, and you'll soon learn that you cannot keep up with it.
I know, yeah.
Oh my God, nightmare. I love my sleep too much. I actually
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
Why?
I feel like maybe that's what Leisha was referring to back whenever we were in college. I literally used to be like 8 hours sleep every night,
Like,
guys.
I was sitting in front of you, and I was sitting in front of you, and you'd be like, there'd be no panic whatsoever. And there'd be buckets and buckets of work coming out of the thing, and I'd be like, oh my God, how is she so much done? I hated how you'd have, that was the one thing about college. I used to get so stressed out when I'd see, you just can't help yourself but look at other people and go, oh my God, so much done. How the hell did they get all that done? What the hell am I doing? You were one of those because you just never showed that you were under any stress. Like I
Oh
probably
gosh, I know.
stressed people out with how bad I was.
No, even now today, whenever I go into the library and I see my classmates are like working on an assignment, I'm like, I need to leave. I can't. I need to do this on my own because you're stressing. You're not actually doing anything to me, but you're stressing me out by being here. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for all of your questions. We'll stay on for another minute just to see if anybody else has any other inquiries. We've got another one from Aoife. I'm a fashion writer doing a series on slow fashion in Ireland. Would love to chat to you guys over the next few weeks if any of you are available. Yeah, amazing. I would say, have you all got LinkedIn, guys, or how can Aoife get in touch?
I have LinkedIn, yeah, and Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say Instagram is probably, yeah, or my email even, yeah.
Yeah, same, Instagram or email, and yeah, I'll definitely be there to respond.
Brilliant.
Sounds
Thank you,
amazing.
Aoife. Oh, no worries. Glad that it's been helpful. It's always good to know that this is helping somebody.
Yeah, I think when I was in college, I used to try and go to loads of talks. I remember a lot of times I'd be leaving the studio to go to like some talk in the city centre or something like that, and everyone's like, "Where are you going?" Like everyone would be in the studio working, and we're like, "Bye, we're off to a talk." But it's so informative. Like I think it's so good to hear other people's points of view and just to get little like insights into into the fashion industry. And yeah, I think hopefully we've inspired somebody here at something that we said. But yeah, thank you to Sorscha, Colin and Amy for all of your amazing insights.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you very much
Leisha.
for having me too. I was actually very nervous, but this has been lovely.
I know when you said tickets are on Eventbrite, I was like, oh God, there'll be 150 people watching this.
Yeah, thanks so much, Leisha, for organising it all and you've been a great host.
Oh gosh, I don't know now. I'm actually in France, believe it or not.
Lovely.
Yeah, so I'm glad the connection has withheld. But thank you, Leisha, for organising. What an amazing way to celebrate Fashion Revolution Week. We should definitely make it an annual thing. We'll be booking you in again. Oh yeah, you'll be up for it again, Colin. I know you will. Amazing. So if we've got no other questions, then I guess maybe we will close the discussion. Yeah, I think we're all on LinkedIn, Instagram. These guys have websites, so any further questions, I'm sure that they'll be happy to help.
Yeah.
Very busy bees.
Anytime.
And thank you all very much for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. Thanks a million, guys.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks for all of the lovely comments in the chat too.
Yes, thank you.
So lovely. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.